My name's Sam Roddick. I'm the founder of a company called Coco de Mer, which was an ethical, luxury-based sex shop where I founded it about 12 years ago. And the whole idea was to create a space within London that could be a platform of a dialogue of a sexual dialogue that could bring in issues like intimacy and vulnerability to the table. If I sound hesitant, it's because this mic is really weird and I can hear myself and I'm thinking, what the fuck am I saying? So I just want you to know first, I'm nervous, and when I get nervous, I get tongue dyslexia, so everything comes out backwards. But what I'm trying to say is, first of all, I'm a feminist. And I'm a very passionate feminist. And my feminism was reawakened about 10 years ago, or not, 5 years ago, when I saw a talk by Eve Ensler around the Congo and rape and war. And at that point, I don't know if you know much about the DRC, but it was extraordinarily violent what is happening over there. And I was so aghast that I wanted to know more. The rapes that were happening or are happening are so fundamentally brutal that it left me feeling like actually now is the time to really claim my fight against violence in this world. So I decided to go to the Congo and meet one particular woman who was brutalized. And in her brutalization, she ended up becoming a heroine in the field of where she would carry about 500 people on her back to safety over a period of the 5 years. And she now houses about those people on a farm in the Congo. And when I went to the Congo, I wanted to ask, I particularly went there to speak to men. I wanted to speak to men who had inflicted this rape upon women, and men who had women in their families that have been subject to such violence. And what I actually found shifted everything. I actually found that the NGO world was suppressing the same rapes that were happening to men. They didn't want us to know to the degree that men were also being raped. And I found that really shocking. I felt that that was an equal form of a suppression of truth. And what I found was that the men who were bearing witness to this were equally damaged by the whole process, and the men who were committing to it, who were committing the violence, were also victims of a circumstance of equal horror. And what I found was we're all in this bloody mess together. No questions were answered. And I think from then on, and through my journey of questioning the world that we live in, and also the gender blame game, I kind of started to crack open my own perspective with a lot more compassion. I wanted to hear stories that took away the gender out of the situation and revealed the person behind it, in order that a more sophisticated, loving dialogue could occur, and hopefully through that dialogue we can have a form of transformation. So when Jude asked me what group I wanted to bring to a discussion table, I said one subject, and then my friend Jerry, who is completely uncontrollable, basically went to the men's festival that Jude started here this year, and he said, Sam, I've got an idea. And then he told me about an idea about his men's group coming to the Women's Festival and starting this dialogue between men and women that could be a lot more honest. And so when we went for a walk, I've got more and more excited about this prospect. Not only that is, I personally have been through my own form of, what would I say? I'm quite scared of men in many ways, even though I had a sex shop and I'm quite a fronted person. I've had experiences in my life that make me quite vulnerable to men. And for me, as Jerry's my mate, I always want to look at ways of transforming myself into being more secure, more understanding, to battle my own aggression, my own friggin' dysfunctions, and actually to be a better person to help create a better world. So I got really bloody excited about the prospect of being on stage with men and finding out what their experiences of women are, and how they are emotionally responding to the world that we live in. This isn't an intellectual discussion. This is a very much a human discussion. These experiences that we're going to hear today are theirs alone, but in each person's experiences there are wisdoms. So because this is a men's group and is a therapeutic men's group, we are going to be, I'm requiring this space to be honest, kind, respectful, and gentle. And when you have questions, because we want your questions, please keep those qualities in mind, because we want to procure as much of an honest conversation as possible. I'm going to now finish, because I've spoken enough. I'm going to hand you over to Jerry. I've got only one question to everybody here on stage, is what is bringing you to be on this stage today? And actually, what have you got to offer the audience in your reasons, and what have you got to say, or what is it you want to say to women? So we're going to have that as the overall question. I'm going to hand you over to the most unruly therapist you'll ever meet, Jerry Hyde, and you can introduce the group.
Thank you very much. Therapist, yeah, it says in the blurb there that I'm a gonzo therapist, which no one really knows what that means. What it means to me is that I'm not really a therapist. I just watched a lot of box sets of The Sopranos and picked up a few tips from there. And I think that was part of my thinking of the time, because my dad was like Gary Cooper, and I didn't want to be, but I didn't really have any alternative role models, and quite often in groups, because I've got lots of these groups. This is just one of the groups. Actually, I'm in this group. I joined it recently, which is a bit strange. But I often say to the group, so who are the male role models? And we normally draw a blank, apart from Jesus or Hillary Clinton. And this is not only strange because we came in and Noel's going, but it's not a circle, because we always sit in a circle. We kind of feel safe. It's like a wagon train or something. Yeah. But it's a bit weird. But it's also, I'm kind of really pleased that you all came. Part of me was thinking there'll probably be like 3 people who are my mates, and maybe a couple of other people who couldn't get into the one upstairs. So I'm a bit knocked out that there's so many of you here. We don't know what we're going to talk about particularly. Sam will hopefully guide us a bit, but I think it was a bit freaky. Sam came and sat in on Tuesday when we met. First person in 14 years that we've let in, and I wouldn't let anyone else in because I trust her, and I'm excited that you're hosting this. But I think it was a bit freaky because Sam came in with some ideas about where she might want to take it, and we just went, half of these guys are jazz musicians. It's just, we'll see what happens, and I'm fairly jazz in my approach. So, is that an introduction?
Yeah.
Cool.
Can I ask you a question, Joe, just quickly? Why did you? What was it about the idea? You came up with the idea, so I just wanted to ask you.
Yeah, that's not. I've got not a very good answer to that, which I was talking to Justin about before. You should be a therapist. I unloaded all sorts of stuff when she joined the group. It's like, great, there's someone I can talk to. And you were challenging me, and you said that in my kind of gonzo style, which is pretty fearless in everything that I do, apart from women. Right? And you said that you find me quite apologetic around women. And actually, I think that's why I wanted to do this. I wanted to come and say, look, I'm sorry, we're not all bad. And that's probably my reason for being here. So thank you for having me. But no, I'm really proud of what we do. I think what we do is, we're not Gary Coopers. We've got. I don't know. It's a bit like when I started working. It really surprised me that the gay guys that I was working with were homophobic. I didn't expect that. And then it's like, well, of course, they grew up in a homophobic society, so why wouldn't they internalise that? And I was brought up by a Gary Cooper kind of guy, and I've internalised some of that, and I think I've probably thrown too much of it out. So I don't know. It's about trying to find that balance, and we do it in secret. We're a kind of little secret society, and there's just something about saying, look, this is what we're up to. I don't know if it's going to make any difference. Hopefully it'll make a difference to my daughters. That's my agenda. And these guys, some of them have children. But yeah.
Okay, right. I'm going to have to really kickstart this off. So,
I'll say something.
oh, good. Okay, great.
I'm here because I'm scared, basically. I'm Dave, by the way. Hi. I didn't want to come, and when it was first suggested to me, I rejected the idea, thought about it, rejected it again, and then I was thinking, what's the apprehension here about? And I thought that I'm very reliant, or I'm very dependent on the approval of women. I seek it a lot, and I seek it in a way, well, because it's so important to me, I've stopped seeking it now. I try and present a certain face to the world, and try and hold back a lot. So talking to a bunch of women, being vulnerable, talking about things that are risky is a real challenge. So you're my therapy group. So help me.
Yeah, I should have. My name's Justin, by the way. I agree with what Dave's saying, actually. I think what we do is lives in a little closet. It's really secret, and we never take it out. So Sam's the only person who's ever come to watch. I think it's really interesting to be in such a big group and to take this weird thing that we do and put it into real life. So I'm really interested to see what happens both to us and maybe to you by outing ourselves. So we're kind of coming out today, I think.
Well, I'll say hello as well. I'm Noel. Yeah, I'm very suspicious of women, I think, and a little bit scared. Mainly scared about what they're going to think of me, but that might be true of the wider population as well. So I just wanted to come here because I'll basically go anywhere with these guys, and feeling a little bit vulnerable that we're not all here, because our meetings, which are once a fortnight, they're really the sort of backbone of my support system. And one of the guys in the group just recently said that this has become like a family, and it really is. So, you know, it was lovely having Sam come in last Thursday, was it? Tuesday. And I'm still feeling a little bit wobbly about stuff that came up that night, so, yeah. Here I am.
John?
Yeah, I'm John. I'm very much, or slightly different from the rest of the group. A, I'm gay, and B, I'm of a generation older than the rest of the group. Why I'm here, I haven't quite fathomed for myself. At first glance, I thought, well, I've got nothing to offer women. I don't, you know, I'm not preoccupied with the opposite sex. I didn't mean to damn the rest of the group by that at all. I've always, having no agenda, I've always preferred, I like the company of women. I suppose underneath there is some vague feeling of, maybe a vague feeling of threat. I'll give a small instance. I was dancing with a woman the other night, and she came up to me and asked me to dance, and I thought, well, this is lovely. And then after a time I thought, what are my expectations? Well, in reality there are no expectations. No, she's not expecting anything of me, and I think that's a product of the generation in which I was brought up. I mean, like Jerry, my father was a Gary Cooper, and it was constantly drilled into me that he was, you know, was what I should aspire to, and my instincts have taken me in completely the opposite direction. And well, I'll leave it there for now anyway, and no doubt as the conversation develops, more will become a bit more fluid and flowing in what we have to say. Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
There's a man in my life who would identify very much with the role model that you've talked about. He doesn't feel that he had obvious signs of affection or love given to him as a child from his father. So he then feels unable to express verbally those feelings of affection or love. Now his actions are very different. He does show affections and love in his actions, but is very unable to verbalise that. I just wanted to throw that back to you and ask, is that a common presentation of how men would, some of the talks that you've had, is that a common presentation of how men would deal with intimacy and difficulties around that?
I think we often need to learn the language. I remember I used to do a lot of tantra, and the man who was running it said, define tantra as being what women, it's teaching men what women have always known. I quite like that. I think us guys particularly, if there's one word that I would describe the quality within the group, it's tenderness, which is a word that's usually given to women. Men aren't seen as tender. I think we are, but what we are is we're kind of renegades. And one of my nicest descriptions of why the guy who's not here, because there's actually 9 of us in the group, he's not here today, that he gave me years ago was, when I asked him why he came, he said it's because if I go down the pub and say to my mate says, how are you doing? And I said, well, I'm a bit down here. I go, here you go, mate, have a pint. Did you see the game? And we got different rules to that. If you want to come in and talk about anything, that's what it's for. And if you cry or fall apart, then we're all going to respect each other for that, because we know that that's a risk. But it is a bit like learning a foreign language. So 20 years ago when I started on this road, it's not even that I didn't have the language, it's something about learning the language that then forms the connection. So before that, I don't know if I even really felt anything. But I had a lot of love and tenderness and vulnerability and all those things within me. But it'd never really been unlocked as a kid.
Our group is the only place you can go to fall apart.
Yeah.
A lot of my life is spent you hold it together. That's the kind of what you do. And it's the only place you can go to fall apart.
Yeah.
And let all that stuff go and get it out. I find.
I think that vulnerability isn't respected, or I don't feel that it's respected amongst men. It doesn't feel like something you can do very often. You can't be vulnerable. You've got to be strong. You've got to put out this kind of front. And I think there's a great vulnerability in expressing feelings of love than in showing feelings of love. And when I've thought about how I might have responded to those situations, it's for self-protection. It's that self-protection side of me. I'll show you, but I might not tell you, because you might say no. You might say something that wouldn't reciprocate. Whereas giving you something is that's just you don't have to reciprocate in that way. You just have to accept it.
Yeah, I think I feel much more comfortable about ending up in a wet, sobbing heap on the floor in our group than I would do in front of my partner or my 2 ex-wives, where I felt that I had to be strong, because when they saw my vulnerability, I could see fear and insecurity in their eyes, and that's a great pressure to try and hold it together. I think when you're not letting your sadness or your fears come out, then you can get,
Turn
depressed.
into Gary Cooper.
You get depressed, you get uncommunicative, you can get angry when things are not expressed. So that's been my experience. And having said earlier that I'm scared of women and suspicious, I realised that I want to say that I also love them and I love their company. That was when I was at school. All my friends, my closest friends, were women, girls, and but now that's not the case at all. And this fear has become, overriding, really. So.
Can I ask
Yeah,
you a question? I'm sorry. No.
Yes, I'd like to agree with the questionnaire. I mean, my father, I said he was a Gary Cooper character, but there was, in retrospect, although I wasn't aware of it at the time, an ocean of emotions, of love and hurt, and vulnerability. But I suppose what did communicate itself to me was the fact that he had blanked it all off. He was a person who wasn't aware that there was a language of emotion, and I lived very much with his depressive periods. I grew up with that. Yeah, thanks.
You had a question too.
Oh, I have a question, which is, when you talk about being scared of women or suspicious of women, what are you scared of specifically, if you can be specific? Or is it just a general fear that you can't identify?
I think, no, I can, it's fear of being judged. That they'll look at me and, I'm 50 now, I don't have a family, don't have kids, that they're going to look at me and think there's something weird, wrong with me, judge my lifestyle, judge my achievements, my looks, everything. So that makes it difficult for me to have eye contact, I think, in the broadest sense.
See, I think there's a flip side to the generation of blokes of dads like Gary Cooper, is that there's a generation of mums who are like Margaret Thatcher. I think you've got a load of really, my mum was super strict, super controlling, so my vulnerability is all about being controlled, because I've grown up in a generation of blokes who don't say anything and women who are pretty pointy.
I think for me, for a long time, my fear of women was what I had been instilled with as a boy. I mean, my mother berated me for possibly growing up gay. I did grow up gay, and the thing she said to me at the age of 12, you're going to, when you grow up, you're going to be laughed at by men and despised by women. And I've always felt the fear of that despising from women, that, like Noel, I would be judged. I would be judged as not coming up to the mark as a man, as a real man. I'd be making advances to women or whatever, and would be judged as a rather second-class human being. I'm losing that now. Well, I can rationalise it now, of course, and but there may be unthought about residues. Yeah, go on.
Finished, and I was going to ask.
Yeah, I have finished, yes.
You talk about where these insecurities have come from, where these fears have come from. They've come from males and females and the like. But what can we do to change that as a community, as a society, so that you can be yourselves and you can voice and express yourselves as you want to? Because at the moment you feel like you can't to the general society. So is there anything that we can do?
Can I I'm going to hold your question, because I have got something to say that I'm very excited about in terms of my own development of feminism and questioning misogyny. And I know I'm going to take it slightly intellectual, and then I'm going to pull it right back into the here and now and people's individual truths, which is, I had a revelation that we're all born innocent. We're all born really genderless, right? And then we're taught as a society to be misogynistic. And in that society, we are taught how to gender divide, right? So actually, the predominant state of our world is very patriarchal. It's very ruled by men, right, in that kind of sense. But that's a myth, actually. What it is we've divided ourselves into really being all misogynistic. We're all taught to be misogynistic. Now, misogyny has a equal dysfunctional effect on men as it is women. And when you talk about emotions, emotions are not allowed to exist. So we deny men having emotions. So I think your question is super relevant, but actually what we need to see is actually how does misogyny affect men negatively? Men are 80, I think it's like 85% of men equate to the suicidal figures. So actually, and that comes a lot from emotional pressure and financial pressures. So I think this is such a relevant question because it takes feminism out of a gender issue, it takes it into a cultural responsibility, and how can we change is a group effort, and I love your question. So I'm going to bring it back to the men to saying, what do you think we, as women, could do to lessen your fear, your suspicion, and the feeling of being judged?
I don't know if it's your job.
It's half of our job, isn't it? It's half of our job.
I think maybe. I mean, we've got to learn the language, haven't we? We have to, as men. I mean, that's what I said we're doing. So I don't know if I can answer that question. Can you?
I could take a pot shot at it, perhaps. I think the source of misogyny in men is very much a fear of their own femininity.
Yeah, I think what we're doing in a way is that, we kind of get, men traditionally, they just fuck off into the woods and sulk, don't they, if they're upset about something. And we're communing, which is more of traditionally a kind of feminine thing. In a way, we come together and we're learning to talk. I think also, oh God, I don't know, have we only got an hour to deal with this? We need a weekend. I mean, for me, I think, I don't know if I'm going off on a tangent or answering the earlier question. I think we need to, in order to feel safe with women, I still don't know if it's your job, maybe it is 50%, but I think that the fear of women that we're talking about comes from programming. So, I mean, I was taught that women's emotion is disgusting. A woman's not supposed to get angry. You're supposed to kind of maybe shed one tear and dab it away with a little kind of Laura Ashley lacy handkerchief or something. We're supposed to punch people in the faces if we're upset. And I was taught that. I was told by my father, you do not cry, you punch them just full in the face.
I think just happened in group.
But sometimes the debate we have feels like the end point of it is that we try and make men and women the same.
Yeah.
That's the alarm bell that goes off in my head. And that actually a bit of vulnerability and fear and difference is as important, and that somehow we have to stop this becoming somehow we're all going to become one community of kind of androgynous CK1 wearers, because that would just be hellish. That's like being in the mid-90s again.
Yeah, I guess going hand in hand with my fear and suspicion goes intrigue and attraction. So because of the difference, and I think answering your question, we're doing it right now.
Yeah.
This is it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that because my fears about women aren't based on experiencing all women, they're based on a few particular experiences, so I don't think it's women's job to fix that, because they're sort of they're not imagined fears, but they're not real either. I've been struggling to find the right words for this, because I just know that like Jerry, I just don't think these particularly women's job to fix this. The only word that I think that might help is acceptance. I think there's broadly speaking a more general acceptance of difference that would be good if we could try to get more of.
My ex-wife at one point in our marriage going, you know what, sometimes I just want you to throw me on the bed and fuck me. I was like, really? I thought that was wrong now. I didn't know that was wrong. And I think, that's the thing, isn't it? I mean, you were brought up in the same world, so you're indoctrinated with this shit as well. And it's like, how do we all kind of move beyond it? And my fear is really, you're talking about how people would judge you. It's that I'll be told I'm not a real man. But I'm trying not to be a real man, because that's what that real man was, and we don't know what the next real man is. It's it's the shame of being judged for not being Gary Cooper, even though I know you don't want us to be.
We've got a question here. Actually,
So I'm just quite curious. What are you guys exactly afraid of? Like, what is it to make us so scared?
Being left. Caring for someone and being left.
Yeah,
So it's
not
actually
being
love,
accepted.
not actually fear. If that makes sense, you're worried that losing them, so that's
Yeah.
love.
Yeah. That's my one. Yeah.
Okay, that's
So can you repeat the questions for us? I don't think everyone can hear the questions.
Oh, yeah.
You repeat it.
that was what that question was. What are you actually fearing about women? I've got.
It was this sort of comment on the discussion we were just having, and I think, you mentioned that, this look of fear and insecurity in a woman's eyes, and about what we can do as women. And from my own experience, there was a time in my life where I really despised weakness in men, and that comes from my own history around my early childhood. So I would have been that woman with the fear and insecurity in my eyes if you'd have shown weakness. And I think what we can do, or what, speaking for myself, I can do, is try and deal with that myself, which I am doing, and learn to accept, acceptance, learn to accept that this guy doesn't have to be, doesn't have to be your dad. He doesn't have to provide all your security. And so I think that's what women can do, like try and get that fear out of our eyes when you start falling apart.
Well, it's a sort of catch-22. You're constantly told, I don't know what you're feeling, you don't express, blah blah, and then when you do, you're told, pull yourself together. So.
If you could just be nice to us, I think that's what we really want, isn't it?
We've got a question at the back there.
Hey everybody, my name is Priscilla. Thanks for being on the panel, everybody. I've got this idea, so I'd like to hear what you guys think about it. I kind of feel like what's been talked about so far is about power, hey? And like a big thing with patriarchy is about how power is distributed. So men or masculine people have power, women or feminine people don't. And then people's relation to that. So I think like often what happens with masculinity is you're expected to have all the power. And so your narrative that you're talking about, someone wanted you to kind of rough them up or have like rough a suit of sex with them or something. And you're like, oh, what? I thought that was wrong. Because like the new idea of how to be masculine is not to have power. And I think the question with like any identity, where there's someone who's in a privileged position and someone who's in a marginalised group in terms of power, is how do you be responsible with the power that's put on you and put on your identity? And then in terms of women or feminine people, how do you kind of step up to that power and also let that person who's always given that power have a break from that to see them as a whole person? So I guess my question to you guys as like a group of men coming together is like, what do you think about that power that's given you? Do you talk sometimes in the groups about when you see bullshit going on in society or something and how you can step up to that without your masculinity being taken away from you?
I think it's really interesting to raise the point about power actually, because I think what happens in the group is what it's uncovered for me is that power, what we end up talking about a lot is emotional power, is the power of which I think is less of a kind of male-female thing. I don't think it's an empowered versus a disempowered along gender lines. I think we talk about power, but we talk about feeling disempowered emotionally. And I think the nature of that debate's just changed. We often talk about giving away a lot of power to women, but it's emotional power. It's not physical, or it's much less kind of gender. It's about what emotional power you give away. That's why we all feel such weaklings. Right?
Repeat a little bit and summarise that question.
The question was the lady. Oh God, blimey! What was your name? Priscilla. Priscilla was talking about what she feels that what we're talking a lot about is power, and actually, how do you then take responsibility a responsibility for the power that the men have been gifted just by being men to a degree. Am I explaining that right? Versus how does a minority group, I'm just summarising your last sentence, sorry, how does a minority group then take responsibility when they can claim power to be able to do that? And you asked the question, how do you deal with power within the group, and the power, and how does power become discussed within the group? I just want to...
Sorry, I realised it's really complicated.
Can I just ask, I think I'm just going to back up what you were saying, because I think actually our global problem is we deny emotion, and we've attributed emotion being a feminine quality. And actually, we don't talk, when is it permissible to go into a boardroom and burst into tears for a man? Surely they would be thought of as completely inadequate within that situation. Or a woman, anger is allowed and is permissible within a workplace much more than emotion. So I do see that when you talk about being disempowered, I do think there is a huge amount of emotional disempowerment, particularly at men, and I think that is fundamentally it's fundamentally what is damaging the world, myself, just to make a statement.
Stop sitting on the fence.
What we're talking about there is, there's a fundamental change in men's role in society that's happened in my lifetime. My father, who was born in 1906, was an old father, and he grew up in a very different view of the world to the one that I inherited. And I think that a lot of men who try to be conscious, try to be thoughtful, try to be caring, are then confused about how we're supposed to act around women, because we can't now, as you say, throw them on the bed and ravish them. We don't think that we can. We need permission first, which is of course entirely the wrong way of going about it. But what do we do? What are we the provider now? Are we supposed to be changing nappies? Do we go out and kill bears, or do we do the washing up? I mean, a bit of both probably, right? But not all the time, because I think that women actually want us to be men as well. And I think that one of the things that we've lost a little bit is, I think we've moved a little bit too far to the feminine side of things. I'd like us to find our masculinity whilst yet retaining a real sense of equality. I don't think equality means the same. I just think it means, no one's better.
On the question of power, I might be able to throw a little bit of light on this. Regarding my first sexual experience at school, I was ravaged by not by a master, but by a schoolmate. And this is, it was a game of raw power, male upon male power, and it was. I'm only highlighting it insofar as it was a formative incident within a general climate of power, where power was, males were fighting each other out for dominance in order that they could dominate, dominate males and females generally. So if there is going to be change, it has to be a matter of, it has to take place at an early age. It has to be a matter of education. I felt very much, it's from the moment, I was ravaged, I felt very much I was both demoted within the male community, and as a consequence, made kind of second class by the female community. And that's, I'm still feeling the resonances of that. But as I say, I'm a generation older than the rest of the group. And I would hope that is changing without our losing our masculine identity. No.
I think I'll just say that I'm feeling vulnerable right now, because I think I'm feeling a pressure to say something smart to an intellectual question, and to be honest, I don't think about power at all. I don't feel I have any power, and I don't feel capable of joining in this conversation. That makes me feel really vulnerable, you know. So that's just highlighting why I want to impress women. Not going to be able to do it.
We've got a question down here.
I'll try to ask a question which is kind of a practical one.
Oh, we love them.
So I've got two brothers who are 23, and my dad's in his, I'm not actually sure how old my dad is, he's in his 50s. And I'd really like to have more conversations with them, because I know that they're really intimidated by my feminism. And I'd like to have conversations where I can communicate, I can allow them to communicate emotionally about the things that have not gone well for them. For example, my dad being unemployed for a while and probably not feeling he could be a provider. I'd like to be able to talk to him about that. The death of his parents, where I very rarely saw him cry about that. But then I'd also like to be able to challenge my dad and my brothers about the way that they treat my mum. Sometimes I get so angry with them because I think they treat her like a domestic servant, and I sometimes just burst out in anger because I don't know how to have that conversation with them. And particularly with my brothers, I'd like to be able to talk to them about the kind of lab culture they have among their male friendship group, and the kind of the rape jokes that they make, or the comments that they make, that I just, again, I don't know how to start a conversation with them about it that doesn't just lead to us both being really defensive. So I know it's a tough question, but do you have any kind of practical tips or ways that I can start to do that?
I'm drunk. No, that's it.
Yeah, I think that's no.
Worth it. And I think how you respond to any time they do open up is critical. And you may not know, you may not be aware of any judgments that you're making, because they're going to be super alert to your response, whether they're aware of it or not. So anytime we do anything different, we're looking for signs that it's the right thing to do or not. So I think any encouragement that you can give them, verbal, non-verbal, I think it's going to be easier with your brothers than your dad. But no, it's a good challenge, and yeah, you should definitely give it a nice to your mum.
A considered email or letter, rather than a conversation. I mean, I don't know if that's helps at all, but just saying exactly what you just said to us now.
But also, I mean, be extraordinarily patient. I've been doing this for decades, and these guys have as well. And we're warming up now. We're starting to get it. And we're starting to learn how to communicate better. But I don't know, I've got I don't know if it's pessimistic or realistic view. I'm not sure if it'll happen in our lifetime. I think a lot of people consider that the kind of events of the 60s and what we call the sexual revolution and feminism is done and dusted. And I think we're halfway. I think a lot of really important things happened. And now, as Dave's saying, we got lost in there somehow. So the second half now needs to happen. And I don't know if that'll happen in my kid's lifetime. I think these social changes take a very long time. But at the same time, watching the Sopranos thing from 15 years ago, I realised that's a little bit. I think I started practicing in the mid-90s, and people in those days used to say, "Cool, I bet you meet a lot of nutters," and that's changed through programs like the Sopranos, through it becoming very mainstream. Everyone's in therapy now. They've got a coach or something like that. And I think the more we kind of do things like this, the more it's in the media, the more there's a kind of a forum or just a place where you're not weird. You're not gay if you cry as a man. And if you are, it's cool.
I just want to add something. I did this course called the Hoffman Process, and basically what it is kind of like, it's a therapeutic process for a week, and at the end of it, I felt an incredible amount of empathy for my dad, because you really have to think in the Hoffman process that you deconstruct yourself, you blame all your parents, and then you realise your parents are just like you. Actually, you realise you have all their worst qualities, and then basically you feel empathy. And I went to my dad. My dad was orphaned at the age of 8. He went to a horrible boarding school, and he has an incredible stutter. He had such a big stutter that nobody knows that he co-founded my mum's company, The Body Shop, and that actually he was the financial genius behind it, because he can't speak in public. I mean, it was crippling. And I went up to him and I just said, Dad, like after I came out of it, and I have quite a, like I'm a feminist, so I'm like feisty little fucker. And so my dad's always kind of on edge. He's like, what the fuck is she gonna do next, right? He adores me, but he was always, and I said, Dad, I really thought about you a lot on the course. And I said, I really felt a lot of empathy. What was it like when you were a kid? And it all came out. And I felt so privileged at actually having the right attitude to hold my dad. My relationship with him after doing that transformed, because I got to hear him and his pain, but without actually dragging him into it or trapping him into it. So I'm just offering it to you. So I'm going to wrap it up by, I really think it's been a major privilege to be allowed inside this group, and for me, I feel like I have learnt a lot, and I've been totally touched by how respectful you are to each other and how much you've offered yourself, and I just want to thank them personally.